It looks great.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Liz Cass. I'm the secretary of the Austin Classical Guitar Board, and I'm here with Kendal Gladish, who is getting ready to change your role on the board, right?
Yep, I'm going to senior status, whatever. I'm
Woo!
rolling off the board after 10 incredibly great years.
Oh,
It's
that's
been such an
amazing.
honor.
10
And
years, a
10
decade?
years. It has been 10 years, but I was one of the ones who encouraged ACG always to be looking for new, fresh faces on the board. So my time has come, and I will still they're stuck with me. I will still be a volunteer and a donor and an advocate forever, but I won't be a board member.
Well, that's great that you'll stay involved.
I couldn't resist it.
And I know that you're passionate about Austin Classical Guitar.
I am indeed.
So that leads to my first question. How did you get involved with Austin Classical Guitar?
Well, we were new residents of Austin, and about 10 or 11 years ago. And my husband knew that I had played guitar as a much, much younger person. And he was invited to a house concert at Jeff and Gail Kadosky's. And so it was one of the weekends. I was still commuting from Chicago. So I came down and I thought that sounded great. And Adam Holtzman from the university was playing. And then Matt Hensley stood up and started talking about the work of Austin Classical Guitar and his vision for it. And I was spellbound because it was so much more than performers, which are wonderful. And it's been such a pleasure to get to hear some of these world famous artists. But his vision for the role of music as a force for good and in schools, and I think that was even before we got into the juvenile justice system and working with young at-risk moms. But I could see the power of his vision, and I was really taken with it. So also at that concert, or at a subsequent one, was a man named John Henry McDonald. And he and I got to talking about this, and he must have seen, I need a new nonprofit to love, because I had just finished a term as chair of the Evanston Community Foundation up in Chicago. And he said, well, I want you to have lunch with me and Matt Hensley. And I thought, oh, cool. I'm going to, I haven't even lived here very long, and I get to go to lunch with these two guys. Never dreaming that he'd say, well, I can see you've had a lot of nonprofit experience, and I know you work full-time up in Chicago, but you're here a lot, so you want to join the board? And I went home and said, hey, Ken, this is my husband, you think I ought to do that? And he said, yeah, sure. They really seem like an up-and-coming group. It was the year after their big guitar competition. And so the rest is just the past 10 years. I served for a couple of years, and then they asked me to be chair, and I think that was a period where Matt's vision was expanding, and we started growing audiences and outreach into the schools and starting new programs. And I remember a couple of times when Matt would talk about an idea and his staff would be there. I would go, okay, get back to the beginning, let me trace this. And it always was so creative, and it worked, and it benefited so many people. So that's how it's happened.
That's beautiful.
Oh, well, thank you. It's really been amazing.
So has there been anything in particular, I know after 10 years there must be so many things, but anything in particular you can pinpoint that has amazed you or surprised you, something that came out of the blue that surprised you about this organization?
Oh, that's a really good question. To be really honest, what has amazed me and encouraged me and boosted me up is I've been a member on both sides. I've been a board member and a staff member and a volunteer in a lot of nonprofits. I have never in any of them seen the level of board staff collaboration and respect that I have here. It's too often contentious, or it's too often the board has a sense of noblesse oblige, and there's none of that. We certainly know how to stay in our lanes, but I think the sense of partnership comes from a clarity of mission that really begins with Matthew, but it permeates his whole staff, and you don't get a sense. He's certainly central, but there's not a terribly hierarchical sense. It's very much everybody has a role to play. They're an incredibly warm staff, and I think they find, or they help people find, their niche where they can make a difference. And it doesn't matter if you're really good at data research or you're a brilliant guitarist and educator. All of these different skills are valued. And so that undergirds everything we do. And it's been exhilarating to be a part of that, because certainly we've faced challenges and worries like any arts nonprofits, but there's never a sense of finger pointing or who didn't do this right. It's, okay, we've got this situation. How do we problem solve it? What do we work for? Yeah. And never losing sight of the ultimate goal.
That's so sophisticated. It's so wonderful when an organization can be sophisticated in that way and also be so heartfelt.
Yes,
and be so collaborative
amazing.
And community minded.
Right, it really is. And so I can walk into a concert or a house concert where I may not even know the host or hostess, but I always feel welcome. I always find the music enriching, and it's always fun to see the staff members. Yeah. And I don't feel like they just want me to do something, although sometimes they do. Or sometimes I've forgotten something that I should have done. But it's a very strong, worthwhile organization, and I'll miss the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah. So speaking of another very strong, worthwhile organization, you've been retired now for 3 years after working with the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, the creators of the Doomsday Clock. So my question to you is, that's such intense work, and so what is it about that organization? Is there something about that organization that has some relief from that stress and that tension of the intensity of being in charge of the Doomsday Clock?
Well, to clarify, I was one of the minions of the people who are in charge of the Doomsday Clock. Those people who make those decisions are, world-class scientists. But I was certainly immersed and interacted with men and women on a daily basis who were incredibly accomplished scientists and experts. And what always moved me about the Bulletin was there were bench scientists and lab scientists and scholars and professors from all over the world who could have been very juiced up about what they were doing, which they were, but they were also profoundly aware and concerned about the impact of what they were doing on humanity. So the biologists and the environmental experts are some of the leading voices on climate change. And certainly we started out, the Doomsday Clock originated in 1945 out of the Manhattan Project scientists who were based at the University of Chicago. And they were obviously concerned with radioactive materials and metallurgy, and all of them were keenly aware that the advancements that were so incredible in the space of those 3 or 4 years of the Manhattan Project had enormous potential for good in terms of atomic energy and medical uses, but also, as we saw at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, horrifying implications for humanity and human existence. So they were very concerned that those be brought to the forefront. And then as we've come along, climate has also become one of the doomsday sort of points of interest, and also the Doomsday Clock, and also cyber warfare, disruptive technologies. And so these men and women get together several times a year and review these things. And then they have a very robust website that publishes things daily. They have a periodical that comes out 6 times a year. And then they have public events, some large, some small, where they get world-class experts. But they're very concerned about humanity and how all these scientific advancements can be used for good and ill. And a lot of them are really interested and passionate about the arts. So while I will say that it was often a great relief to come home to Austin on a weekend after a doomsday clock meeting or one of our quarterly sessions, it was there were a lot of commonalities. These were serious, serious people, but they were very well intentioned, and it's still an honor to do some work with them every year.
That's reassuring. I'm really happy to hear you say that.
Right. Well, we should all be reassured, even though they're worried right now, as we all are.
Yeah.
We all are.
It's a lot to think about.
Yes.
Glad to know that there's some smart people.
Oh,
at ACG and at the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists.
Right.
And so now that you're going to have a little bit even more free time, what's next for you? Do you have any travel plans?
Well, my husband and I hope to travel more this year, but we have a new arrival coming in about 2 or 3 weeks in our family in Chicago. So we're expecting our second grandchild.
Congratulations!
So that will occupy us for the first few months. And then, yes, we've done some international travel. We'd like to do more. My husband gave me gift certificates to visit a national park this year.
Ooh.
And Galveston, Texas, and just do fun things. So we want to do things like that. But Austin and Chicago are home. And
Yeah.
so,
well, and a new baby. Can't beat that.
yeah, no, we can't. Well, her big brother, who's 3, he's going to be wonderful. But right now, he's a little bit mystified by all this disruption in his perfect little life.
Your physical presence might be necessary.
Well, yes, apparently that's going to be my sole job for the next month or 2.
Well, Kendal, thank you so much for chatting with me, and thank you so much for your service with the ACG board, and look forward to continuing to collaborate with you on all kinds of artistic things with ACG.
Well, I'm glad, and I think one of the best things we've done in the past few years is to recruit you.
Oh.
So I'm really quite serious about that.
Thank you.
Thank
you so much.
You've brought a new spark and a whole new dimension of music and the arts to the organization. So thank you.
Thank you. It's an honor. Bye.
Bye.